How's it going, guys? It's Derek with the Fantasy Flyer back here with another episode to start off week two. As with me as always, or maybe not as always as much anymore, but it's still Taylor. Taylor, how you doing, buddy?
What's up? Yeah, not as much these days, but I'll be here at least once a week.
That's what we like. That's what we like. We like to spread it out, make sure everybody's relaxed in their environment. Speaking of environments, all right, week two. Talk about a
Yeah,
testy environment. I don't know if we're really in that much of a better spot from week one than we are going into week two. I think we figured some things out, but there is a lot going on.
yeah.
Adjust my camera here just a
It
hair.
was I mean, I feel like we always say this about week one. It was kind of ugly. There was some interesting usage for certain players, and as usual, there's going to be overreaction on both sides. So to your point, we're going to need at least another week to really figure out, teams are still figuring out their rhythm. Preseason kind of means nothing at this point. It's uh
Yeah.
It's gonna be yeah, it's gonna be an interesting week too, and we'll hopefully get enough information to start really making solid fantasy choices
It's a
moving forward.
huge problem. It's difficult. It's difficult. Especially for some of us who are already 0 and 1 in every single league. I think I did this on Tuesday. I'll do it now. Because it's only fair.
Sir, you're a loser. Are you feeling sorry for yourself? Well, you should be because you are dirt. You make
Yeah.
me sick, you big baby.
Yeah, it's
I,
not great.
I went 50-50, so I'm feeling okay.
All right, you're doing a little bit better than me. You're doing a little bit better than me. Um, there's light over the horizon for you.
Yeah.
Uh, we'll start off. We're gonna get into our starts and sits a little bit. Let me turn that off. We're gonna get into our starts and sits in just a little bit, as we did for week one. We're gonna go back for week two, and we'll give you three that we can start, three and we can sit. I'm gonna be a little bit deeper on these, so they're not gonna be, Michael Pittmans and Calvin Ridleys and stuff. Now we're going to get into some nitty gritty. But first, we are going to start off with the keys to watch for week one. Just a few topics that are some things to note as we go into week two. I'm sure most of these are well known in the community. If you've been paying attention this week, we already have injuries. We touched on a couple of these, just a little mini nine for everybody. Austin Eckler doubtful. Darren Waller is no longer on the injury report. He looks like he's healthy. James Conner looks like he's healthy. CJ Stroud got added to the injury report today. I don't think there's any other big ones that I missed as far as
Kelsey should be playing. It
Kelsey's
still
in.
says
Oh,
questionable, but he should be playing it, is what I read.
you are correct. I saw that as well. Mark Andrews is still questionable as well, but he's trending to play, I believe.
Hmm.
So I mean, teams are kind of going to see, and not only Chris Jones is also making his return to Kansas City for the defensive line after signing his contract, and yay, happy he got paid, cha-ching, money, 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 money. Um, so that Kansas City is going to be at about full strength finally, which gives good. I mean, it's good for that team. Patrick Mahomes looked a little frustrated last Thursday, so
Yeah.
mini buy to get Kelsey and Chris Jones. I'm curious if on Monday he went into the front office and was like, "Are you going to continue to not pay Chris Jones?"
Yeah,
Just
right.
curious. Just curious. I just watched what happened. Wasn't fantastic. Like, can we not another week? And they were like, "All right, let's just call Chris Jones." Um, but that's the way football works. It's a business. Anyway, back to our actual topics. Let's start off on Tuesday. I put out the forgotten rookies, all of these sub first round dynasty draft first round and anyway rookies that were putting out some amazing. I mean, they did amazing things in week one that you're not supposed to overreact to week one, but I kind of made it my job to overreact. And there's some really good things. I'll cover it. Taylor has not been able to see the video at this time. So I'll cover a few of them. Michael Wilson, 90% snaps for the Cardinals, led the team. Um, Big body, could be useful. Luke Musgrave, 85% for Green Bay. Also caught 3 passes for 50 yards. Kind of shows he's going to be the number one. We know about Rashee Rice, who did, he actually was targeted on 25% of his routes that he ran. Actually, 25% of his snaps, not even routes, but snaps. Thursday night football, good sign for him. And then, of course, Puka Nacua was number one on my list for the forgotten rookie. I did not have him on my radar at all, even with Cooper Kupp out. I was much more in on Van Jefferson, Tyler Higbee, Tutu Atwell, and just Puka went out and blazed the glory. I'm on the hold your horses train this week against San Francisco. I'm not a fan of the Puka, the Puka nukes, if you will. Where are you on this, Taylor?
I had my eyes on him during the rookie draft, and I was a little annoyed that Ian snagged him. I was hoping I might be able to grab him. So I think he's, yeah, I think he's for real. I will say, I'll double check the numbers, but I will say that usage wise, I think that Van Jefferson actually was, out there on more percentages of like snaps and whatnot. So to your point, I don't want to go too far in the is he going to do this again direction. I think he's going to be decent this season. He's a rookie, so it's going to be a little volatile. But I think he's for real. I think he has a decent future in the NFL. So we'll see how the season goes. How to your point against San Francisco, I don't see this week going great for him or that team.
Very tough defense. Very
Yeah.
tough defense.
Yeah.
Just to double check myself. I think you were absolutely 100% correct. Van Jefferson, 93% of snaps, Tutu Atwell, 79%, which is only one more than Puka had.
Okay.
After those three, no one else saw more than 26% of snaps.
Yeah.
So it was basically those three. I mean, essentially on the depth chart, Puka lines up third without Kupp.
Mhm.
So
Right.
your 4 week ceiling is very limited from here on out.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was limiting. This is a San Francisco team they gave up the second least amount of yards last year and the least amount of points. Or I might have those even backwards, but they were a very good defense. It did not look any different in week one, and that was
Yeah.
with Nick Bosa only playing I'll check it again just because I'm sitting here, but I want to say he played like 30% of snaps.
Yeah. And then
No, he
going
played 56. He played a little more than I thought. 56.
Yeah, okay. Going back to Musgrave real quick, people can double check me on this, but I think he had a pretty solid play. Maybe it was whatever. Something was called back on him, which probably would have given him better stats and or fantasy points. I liked his usage. I think that he's going to be a big part of the team's usage going forward, depending on, once Watson comes back, how that affects things. But he's obviously a talented young rookie. Tight ends take a little longer to sort of adjust and
Develop.
become fantasy relevant. So
Yep.
that's always tough, but I see him being a part of the team's plan this season for sure.
Well, this whole team, it's the youngest team in the NFL right now.
Yeah.
There's no other team with an average age younger than the Packers. So, use him. He looks good. Roshan Johnson also made that list. Real quick, I know we talked about this before show. You are not as high on Roshan this week. I'm not so much as I would say high on Roshan. I'm extremely intrigued that he led the team in snaps.
I think intrigued is a good way to put it.
Yeah, my interest is peaked. I want to scratch my chin and pay very close attention, especially against the Buccaneers. That, for all intents and purposes, this Buccaneers team. Offensively, we didn't expect them to have the fortitude they did last week against the Vikings, but defensively, they did very well against the Vikings as well. Which, not to say that they were supposedly bad, but the defensive line is not the same now. I'm peaked as far as Roshan goes to see what the snaps look like this week. I told you, and I'll say it here on the show. I'm starting him in my dynasty league, in our dynasty league. Because first off, I don't have a lot of other options. Let's be honest. The other option I'm definitely starting is Rashad White, who I will mention a little later when we get to start to sit, just as a honorable mention. But I'm interested to see how Roshan goes. If he can continue to see 40% of snaps and still be effective on those 40%, it's slowly going to grow probably by midseason.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like I mentioned during the beginning or during the pre-show, I think, or a lot of that was unfortunately stat-wise during garbage time. So that's the only part that gives me hesitation. But I said this, like he did a lot. With those opportunities, he had a better average yard per carry than Herbert. He got
Right.
the receiving touchdown. So, or was it a receive? It was a rushing
It was
touchdown. I
rushing. It was
apologize.
a
Yeah.
yeah, it was a rushing touchdown.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, getting the touchdown, having a decent yards per carry, being involved in the receiving game. I don't know exactly how the break was, versus garbage time and not, but he did a lot with his opportunities. So yeah, I am intrigued. We'll just have to see how the usage is not garbage time wise.
Not garbage time. We do not want that. I'm trying to see. Roshan Johnson started playing a lot in the beginning of the third quarter, so it wasn't quite. It was a blowout, but it wasn't quite over yet.
Mm.
A lot of the touchdown drives, that's the punt drive that he didn't. I'm just looking back on the play call. So yeah, I mean Khalil Herbert's in there for a lot of it too at that point. So yeah, from third quarter on, he kind of stepped up and played a lot.
Yeah, I mean the
I don't
biggest
argue
thing
that.
always with running backs is, especially rookie running backs, is the being able to block and being trustworthy in that part of the game. So if he's still working on that, that's another thing that's going to keep him off the field.
It's him and Deontay Foreman for that. Khalil Herbert is not the most amazing pass blocker that from the you put him on the field and he can get bulldozed. But Roshan and Deontay Foreman are solid in that category at minimum, I would say. So yeah, interesting to me. I'm gonna see how this unfolds against Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay doesn't run the ball a lot, but I will say Rashad White also piques my interest. Seattle Seahawks and the Giants, another key to watch. These are two teams, and there's probably two others I could name that were, we'll say, off their game. But I think these are the two that stood out to me the most from week one that just never got the train on the tracks. They never put any gas in the car. They decided to stay home and call it another Sunday for the summer.
Yeah.
I don't know what to make of either of these teams. The only thing I told you before the show is it looked like to me both offensive lines were not doing good things. The Giants more than the Seahawks,
Mhm.
but neither offensive line was really helping out their quarterback, let alone anyone else.
Yeah. Daniel Jones definitely got sacked a good amount of times. Yeah, the Seahawks was a little more surprising. But to your point, the O line wasn't 100%. And Lockett was out for a little bit for concussion protocol reasons. So
Right.
I think they'll right the ship for sure. The Giants, I mean, I I don't necessarily like Daniel Jones, but I think that they have a better receiving core. They obviously have Saquon, and coaching wise, they are in a much better position than they have been for a while. We saw that last season. So
Mm-hmm. A
I guess
lot.
I would give them the benefit of the doubt as well to right the ship. And like I said before, preseason's kind of pointless, and week one is sort of like the week, what it used to be week 3 of preseason, where we kind of like truly
You got a
test it.
good, yep.
Yeah,
And nobody's doing that anymore, which is something
right.
that is just absolutely, it's infuriating really to me because
Yeah,
that's now we go into this. I mean, it's not to say that they should be putting their people on the line, their
right.
players on the line for us just to see like our fantasy teams and whatnot. But now the teams are suffering, which is just point blank. And
Yeah.
it's not all of them, obviously. We saw what teams were very involved in the games and were very successful in running their game plans.
Hmm.
But there's a lot that are just they're coming on the field and like the Bears, there's huge hype over them all offseason. They came on the field and laid an absolute egg.
Yeah.
I
Yeah, I
mean,
mean,
not that the Seahawks and the Giants didn't, but there's 3 examples of teams that just like, all right, this team looks rebuilt, revamped. They're looking like they're gonna throw fists, and they get on the field and they're basically clapping their hands, and that's it. Sorry, I
yeah.
caught you at
No,
for a drink.
I timed it poorly. No, and
Start that again.
that's kind of my point is, or not necessarily my point, but something I wanted to bring up was the fact that these teams have had a lot of movement during the off season, and to not really be able to test these players until week one, truly test them against, an actual defense is, I mean, they have the shared practices and whatnot, whatever. My point is you have these moving pieces that are new to the team, new to the playbook and whatnot, and we're seeing that in week one.
Yeah. I expect better things out of both teams. The Giants and the Cardinals should be a good game for all the wrong reasons. And the Seahawks are playing Detroit, which matchup. I was like I said to you before the show. That's the matchup that decided who went into the playoffs last year.
Yeah.
Like that should be a barn burner.
Yeah,
And
hopefully it should be a fun game, but after seeing what the Seahawks did in week one, I'm a little hesitant, and we may see Detroit just bulldoze them.
yeah. Hopefully the offensive lines don't get in there. Don't get in there too bad. Then they'll get ruined. Next one on our list is a quick question. Where's my star receiver? So the four that I have written down here, and it's the bottom line for these four is you should not panic. Hopefully nobody's panicking. They know it's week one, like we just covered. Nothing's going to be the same in week 3 or week 6. Deebo Samuel had a really unseen game because of Brandon Ayuk. Odell Beckham, who was actually targeted a few times, but just wasn't in the right spot, didn't have the connections like Zay Flowers did. Jalen Waddle, another one who didn't have a stellar game, but was kind of overshadowed by Tyreek Hill having 736,000 yards. And then Jamar Chase, who goose egged it as well for all intents and purposes, but that could have, I'm chalking that up to a bad quarterback game for Joe Burrow. Because you can't, if you're as a wide receiver, you can't catch what isn't thrown at you. So the only safe spot for these that I want to put out is Beckham. Beckham is going to end up being behind Mark Andrews, and again we expect Mark Andrews to play this week. I'm not putting a lot of faith in Beckham taking a huge leap forward, but he was expected to be the clear wide receiver 1/2 on this team, and now it looks like it's going to be Zay Flowers. Mark Andrews takes a hit to that. Obviously you still start them. These are all 4 people you start. If you have them on your fantasy team, you have to start them. Even if they get another dud here, you have to start these guys because they're still monsters of the game. I'll add Garrett Wilson into this. I'm not starting Garrett Wilson because of the quarterback change. But on a side note, if I'm the Garrett Wilson owner, I'm potentially looking at an out because you have the rest of the season. I mean, all 5 didn't have great games. Save Garrett Wilson. I would expect the other 4 to take a leap forward this week in at least notoriety, if not fantasy production.
Yeah, I think you said this, but like Deebo was passable. Ayuk just had a great game, and honestly, I don't know if you saw one of his plays, but he wasn't even he was just blocking, and he just demolished some dude, and that gave way for Christian McCaffrey to just have like a 70-yard run. I don't know if he actually got the touchdown on the run, but Ayuk just had a great block. Beckham, I'm a bit hesitant or a bit nervous on Beckham, and it is the whole reason we're having this conversation. It's week one, don't overreact. But Zay Flowers he had 9 targets to Beckham's 2. Granted, Beckham had like a 92% snap share, and Zay Flowers still had he had 84% snap share. So it's not like Zay Flowers was out there significantly less. Beckham definitely had the snap share of, without Mark Andrews, the wide receiver 1.
Yeah.
Zay Flowers maybe just benefited in the fact that people haven't really seen him on the field to this degree, and they maybe were guarding Beckham more heavily than Zay initially.
Right.
But Beckham's also 30 years old. Zay's 23. Zay's a speedster. Beckham's had 2 ACL tears and other injuries. So I kind of see this continuing. And to your point, when Mark Andrews comes back, it's only going to hurt Beckham more.
Right.
Jamar, yeah, Burrow was a mess. Waddle, since Hill's been there, he's been up and down. He's a great player, also speedy. I think he's going to have continued success in the NFL, obviously, but with Hill there, it's just going to be kind of volatile.
Well, he's the one Dolphins wide receiver who's had consistent success against the Patriots, which
Because
we
they
will
just
talk
hone
more
in
about.
on, yeah.
Right. We'll talk about that when we get to start and sits as well, and I'm probably going to make some people angry at me. And that's just okay, because guess what?
You are a smelly pirate hooker.
That's all I have to say. Defensive matchups, last key for the week to watch for. A lot of defense that was very stellar, and other defense that didn't have to be stellar and was just their bodies in the way because they were leading by a lot of points. Shout out to the Packers. Other defenses that did really good, Jets. I'd say the Jets had probably low key the best defensive. I'll even put them ahead of Dallas, actually. And here's my reasoning for that. Josh Allen didn't throw bad throws. They made good plays on just about all of them. Dallas had, I mean, Dallas took advantage of some poor offensive line play. There was none of that with the Bills. Jordan Whitehead has Josh Allen's home phone number, apparently, because he also has every pass he throws his direction. So, I like the Jets defense, and I've said that for a year now. They've been low key one of the better defensive teams, and now people are starting to realize it. In defensive efficiency, they are great. Sauce Gardner did not have a good week, and that game, even with Zach Wilson, is over in the third quarter if Sauce Gardner doesn't give up like 100 yards to Stephon Diggs. Dallas themselves, obviously, you have the blocked kick, which is special teams, not so much defense, but it still counts defensively. You have the interception for a pick six, which is good positioning. Saquon got hit and coughed it up. It is what it is. And then there's a couple, they have two other interceptions and a fumble or something like that.
Yeah.
So it's not, they didn't do anything amazing. They did what they were supposed to do. And there was nobody really putting out an effort that would stop them otherwise. There was no great offensive plays. The offensive line that you could get to Daniel Jones, and eventually the only thing Daniel Jones can do is like start hucking it. Like he's got to do something other than just get sacked and sacked and sacked.
Right.
So there's more panic button that led to Dallas being good versus the Jets that actually earned that. They earned that victory by using defense.
Yes, that's exactly what I was going to say.
And Dallas, I mean, you could have stopped playing defense at halftime, and they would have won by 4 touchdowns. So
I mean, yeah, Dak was, at least from a fantasy perspective, he was abysmal. He was fine, passable. I'm not worried about Dak.
Well,
but
he didn't have much of an opportunity.
Exactly. That's Dallas defense just points after points after points. They kept putting, the Giants back on the field because they were scoring. So yeah, Dak didn't get a lot of opportunities, but the Jets, they, without their defense, I don't see how they win that game with Wilson and the way that he played, which is only an unfortunate, foreshadowing for the rest of the season for this team, unfortunately.
This gets worse. So Daniel Jones had 67 total snaps in the game in week 1. He played one more offensive set than Dak Prescott did.
Damn.
He played one further into the game.
Right.
He took 67 snaps. Dak took 51 total snaps. To put that in perspective, I'm going to go down to a game that went a little long. Let's go to let's check Devontae Smith had more snaps that's not it. Oh, here's a good one. Quez Watkins had more snaps than Dak Prescott last week.
Wow.
There you go. There's your comparison.
Yeah.
So the defense was keeping Dak on the sideline. Just essential. There's just no other way. The pick six and the block kick return for the touchdown were just, I mean, that's the difference between 51 and 70, and 70 is what just about everybody else had. So,
right.
Yeah, that's just it's something that's going to happen. And now to the third team that we got to keep an eye on, San Francisco. Again, I can't rule. The Rams have been they were surprised last week, but last year they were utterly terrible, even with Matthew Stafford. And now they go in against San Francisco, and they have to have some kind of special game plan. This over under on this game, I think, is like 42. Um, I don't know. I don't know how to trust any of the Rams components against this defense that is just. I mean, the offensive line for the Rams was the problem last year. They seem to be a little better, which is a plus, but I don't. I like San Francisco in this game, and I don't like the Rams scoring more than like 17 points.
Yeah. And I mean, even in the past with Cup, like Shanahan has McVay's number. He just knows what that man is planning to do. So I don't see this going well for the Rams, unfortunately.
I wouldn't. I mean, let's see what the last. Let's see. Last October they played. Not last October. No, it was last October. They played twice. Rams lost 31-14 and then 24-9. And at least one of those games was Matthew Stafford. That's for sure. Yeah, Stafford versus Garoppolo in the beginning of the month, and then Stafford again, and they lost both of them badly. And that was with Cooper Kupp. So the total of 23 points between 120 minutes of football.
Yeah.
So I don't have a lot of hope for that team going into this weekend. I got the 49ers pretty clearly on that one.
Mm-hmm.
But those are some keys to watch. We're gonna go now into the start sit portion of the show because we got to do that. I'm gonna read off my starts and sits, and they are basically mine. I didn't do anything. Taylor got fed this one this week. He's had a busy week, and it's okay. Taylor, however, is going to react to what I'm saying, and I want him to be as truthful as he was in the pre-show because he called me an absolute utter piece of garbage.
Yeah, these are all terrible. Don't listen.
That guy's ruining a perfectly good game of football.
Yeah, that's what it is. And you know what I say to that?
Your mom goes to college.
So moving along. We'll go with the starts first. Number one for me is Zach Moss. I'm probably not going to get a lot of fans from that one. I did not want to pick oh well, go out there and start Kenneth Walker, like duh. But I wanted to pick somebody who is A, returning, important. B, has been practicing for a little bit, and C, has a plus matchup. Zach Moss is just against a team that's generally bad against the run. They allowed 4.7 yards per carry last year, did the Houston Texans. He should be the feature back. Richardson last week seemed like he could use a better check down option. Zach Moss is not afraid to catch the ball out the backfield. Sorry, Deion Jackson, you're just not Zach Moss. Last week, Houston allowed less than 3 yards per carry and got torched in the pass game, just to be pretty fair, of which I expect Moss to also be a part of. So pick your poison, Houston. That's my goal. The other thing, and I explained this to Taylor before the show, is I expect there to be there is a question mark around CJ Stroud. I expect there to be a big enough of a question mark where if he doesn't play, then Indianapolis is going to have the lead, I would imagine. Most, if not all, and they should be running the ball, which just means more rushing snaps, which means that regardless, if Deion Jackson takes 50% of whatever snaps, the more snaps there are, the more Zach Moss is. So I say start him. I have a floor on him of about 6 fantasy points in PPR, and I have a ceiling not touchdown dependent of about 13, 14. If he hits the end zone, you could be looking at 17, 18. That is my first start. Go ahead, Taylor, and spit on me.
I don't hate this. I'll start by saying that I personally just don't like Zach Moss, but the team does like him. It seems the best out of their options. Maybe it would have been different if Evan Hull was healthy, but when Zach Moss was traded to the Colts last season, Deion Jackson had a handful of good games, and Moss came in and took over usage wise, and it's obviously his second season with the team. He got hurt in the preseason, whatever, but it's another season with the team, and I see that trend continuing. So unfortunately for Deion Jackson, I think his days of being he was more or less the bell cow, because that was all they had at the time. So I think that's out the window, and Zach Moss will be the number one running back. So yeah, I do like this. I just don't like Zach Moss, and I've never had high hopes for him, but
he has the plus side matchup, and he should have the snaps.
Exactly.
Like what's going on? Also, what you just said is Deion Jackson now is going to be on the sideline screaming.
They took our jet.
Yeah, pretty much.
Pretty much, yeah, that's about it. Number 2 start on this list is George Pickens. I would have put DeAndre Swift on this list if I was texting Ian last night in our group, and Ian agreed DeAndre Swift. He swapped out Swift for Pickens, and then Swift went off. So I'm gonna do him a favor, so to speak, as much as I can, because I agree with George Pickens. Deontay Johnson's on the bench. I mean, he's doubtful. Next man up, right? Most importantly to me, Kenny Pickett threw 46 times last week against the 49ers defense, connected for 67% of his passes, which is a pleasant sign. I can see the hesitation because the Steelers, the offense, but this is Cleveland and not San Francisco. There are some good linebackers, some good defensive pieces in Cleveland. Zadarius Smith had a good week 1. But I look that to hurt more Najee than the wide receivers. Allen Robinson had a great game. I don't hate Allen Robinson, but he has a bad track record. I'll jump on the limb with Pickens. I feel like Cleveland will probably make Pickett throw at some point. I can see this being a close game, so they have to be strategic. Tomlin is strategic generally. My floor for him is like about 8 points, really. And then his ceiling is only up from there. It depends on how the game unfolds. So I think you already said you kind of agree with this.
Yeah, I like the upside of Pickens. I don't know what Pickett's gonna do. Like, obviously Robinson was pretty decent in week 1, but he's older, aging, hasn't had a couple of good seasons. Calvin Austin's definitely gonna get more usage, but
Yep.
I think the point here is Pickens has the better ceiling, the better upside. He's younger, talented, so I like it.
And our third start is James Conner against the Giants. He's healthy. Like I said, came off the questionable tag today. Again, Giants defense just looks like they're not ready for football. Again, that might be overreacting, but you got to be confident in James Conner's ability. He had 91% snaps last week, had 7 targets, and then had the majority of pass catching or of rushing, I should say. If Dobbs can find a rhythm for Arizona, it'll only help him, whether pass or run. I like James Conner this week. More comfortable with starting Hollywood too this week, just because the Giants defense doesn't look awake. And it could, like, that's the difference. But I think if that's going to be awake, James Conner is going to be the one who it won't matter as much for. And so I'm going to take Conner. Ceiling for him is really like 18 or 19 points. I mean, it's like you could hit 20 or 21 if he has a solid game. All depends on red zones and where the ball is. But I mean, he has a high floor.
Yeah, this is probably my favorite one of the 3. I mean, I liked him coming into the season, minus the fact that Murray is out, and there was questions as to whether this team would just tank for Caleb or whatever. So those were my only hesitations, but he's getting the usage. He's a solid player, and unfortunately they don't have I shouldn't say they don't have other options, but he's probably the most highly used and most
Correct.
Yeah, because without Murray they're not throwing it the best.
Right. On to the sits. Sit him, coach. Number 1, Gus Edwards, and this also applies to Justice Hill. Really, 2 things I'm basing this around. 1, Mark Andrews will be back. This past game, actually 3 things I'm basing it around. Mark Andrews should be back. Pass game is going to it worked last week. It should work here. Number 2, Lamar Jackson led the team in rush yards last week, even after Dobbins left. That's Lamar Jackson. He's the team's number 1 rusher. It's just the way it is. And to make things worse, the offensive line is missing 2 key pieces. Tyler Lindenbaum and Ronnie Staley both out for Baltimore. Offensive line not as strong. Stay away from both of them. I would rather start like Brian Robinson over either of those guys, just in case you're curious. I mean, let the pass game do what it's going to do. I'm not touching that rush game. I think Lamar Jackson has it on wraps, at least for the time being.
Yeah, completely agree. This backfield's in dire straits. It's a mess. So yeah. I don't really. I mean, as someone who took Justice Hill because I'm hurting running back wise, I don't really want any part of this.
Yeah.
The super duper weenie world headquarters.
That's what's in the backfield. Number 2 on the sits, Cortland Sutton. Commanders defense here. If it wasn't for the Cardinals having like a fumble for a touchdown, last week. This game was over in like the third quarter. I think that was a momentum play for them. I'm not gonna play too much on Cortland Sutton, even without Greg Dulcich. Jerry Jeudy is back. Adam Troutman saw a surprising amount of targets last week. He will be the tight end one. I think there is still plenty of wide receiver work to go around. I think Jeudy ends up being the beneficiary from all of it. This is like the highest of my sits. I think his floor is like 9.5 or 10 points. He's touchdown dependent really to hit wide receiver too. Like you would see it 14 or 15 points is probably his ceiling with a touch, or probably his mid with a touchdown. That puts him wide receiver 2 for me. Borderline wide receiver 1. I'd rather start Michael Pittman, Christian Kirk, Chris Godwin, any of them over Sutton. I think Russell spreads the ball well. Again, Jerry Judy's back and should help. I mean, he connects with Russell pretty well. So Jerry Jeudy, I would take obviously over Cortland Sutton. I'm sitting Sutton this week.
That's it. And the only thing I would swap is I might do Zay Jones over Christian Kirk.
Interesting. Very interesting. Interesting. We'll save that inspection for us. Number 3, and this sit is definitely going to get me some heat. So prepare your jetpacks and your comments. I am sitting Tua Tagovailoa this week. Huge sit. Week 1 was an explosion from Miami, but that was the Chargers, who even by Vic Fangio's admission weren't ready to play defense. The Patriots defense is different. I expect a different approach to containing Miami's offense, and includes easing up slightly on the run, like they've done generally over the last few times they've played. And just basically containing Tyreek Hill. A little bit of a bump to Jalen Waddle because of this. Like I said, he's been the one that the Patriots have let beat them historically. Patriots have a great set of defensive ends. Matt Judon, Josh Uche, love them. I don't think Tua has a bad game necessarily, but we gotta bring our expectations from the roof down to like maybe knee high, maybe up to the waist. I will explain this again as I did you, Taylor, off camera. 5 of the last 6 games between these two have gone under 36 points. And there were 2 defensive turnovers for points in the other game that went over 48, which is what the over-under is for this game. Tyreek Hill has yet to have 100 yards as a Dolphin against the Patriots. And Tua specifically has not had more than 223 yards and has never had a 2-touchdown game against the Patriots. So going into this week, I am taking this game to go very under 48 points. Like I have in the 40 to 42 range. And I see Tua as like a 20-pointer, maybe.
At best, yeah.
Yeah, I don't say at best, because there's a world where he gets 20.
At best.
No. He's probably, honestly, don't get married to 30-point games. His ceiling for me is 24. His floor is 14. I'm starting Jordan Love. I'm starting Anthony Richardson, Jared Goff over him. I'm not a huge fan. The history says that Belichick has Tua's number. Coaching hasn't changed a lot. Offensive line isn't any better. I don't see why it would really change a crazy amount.
Yeah. Yeah, we've touched on this a couple of times, but Patriots, Belichick, they hone in on your number 1 option. I think Tua, to your point, is not going to have a bad game, but it is not going to be like last week. And there is a world where it's higher than 20. But I think stifle your expectations.
100% stifle them. He's my sit number 3 of the week. I also want to give a big shout out to Aaron Rodgers, who had his surgery. Good for him. Don't start Zach Wilson. I don't think I needed to say that for anybody. I wish Aaron Rodgers the best, but at the end of the day,
how many times do we have to teach you this lesson, old man?
It's just kind of the way it. I hope he does well. I hope he recovers quick. I don't know if I condone coming back next year.
I want to see him come back. I want to see him end on a high note.
He'll be good.
Yeah.
He'll be good. He'll be fine. You can't end like that. That's 100%. He'll be fine. He's got to get him to at least like the AFC Championship game or something, because that team is really good with him, and I know they will be. 4 plays was not.
They were a Super Bowl contender with him this year.
100%. I still had them at like 11 or 12 wins until he went down. Then it's like 9 at most. But that's going to do it for this episode of the Fantasy Flyer. I'm Derek. That's Taylor. As usual, we're ending with Bob Barker. We'll see you guys on the other side of the weekend. Take care.
Peace out, y'all.
Reminding you, help control the pet population. Have your pet spayed or neutered. Goodbye, everybody.